So, classic character profile time. Des Barnes.
De Barnes.
It's French for the Barnes.
Yeah, it is.
Des Barnes. Yeah, he was a character that was obviously in it when I started watching Coronation Street.
Obviously.
Obviously he was. And I never really liked him, but I think if I was watching it now I'd probably like him more, because he was a bit of a cheeky, chappy kind of, bit of a prankster kind of guy. But I think what I didn't like about him was he was a bit of a womanizer, and he always was jumping from bed to bed, and I think he was probably one of the characters that made people like I can't remember who it was that played Percy Sugden say, "Oh, Coronation Street is all about sex, sex, sex these days," because that was basically what Des was, jumping around
sex machine
from woman to woman, which I never really liked that about him, but
you know, everyone's got their dark side, haven't they?
Yeah, and I only saw like the last couple of years of his characters
anyway.
Don't tell people that I do that. So
he was
this is a
born...
character that I've been interested to read about.
Wow. So, he was born on the 24th of April 1965, and he died, spoiler, on the 18th of November 1998.
I remember that.
His parents were Bob and Pat Barnes.
Pat is a girl.
I was going to say Bobalina and Patrick Barnes. Brother Colin Barnes. He married Steph Jones in 1990 and Natalie Horrocks in 1998, and then he died. First appeared on the 12th of February 1990. Last appeared on the 18th of November 1998. He was in 772 episodes, and he was the 64th most featured character, played by Philip Middlemiss.
Yeah, Phil Middlemiss. Now you just had to have a quick look on Google image search to remind yourself what Des Barnes looked like.
I am now aware of who this person is, and
you
he
remember
looks
him
a
now?
bit like that guy. Who was the one that went out with Frankie? He was from London.
Danny Baldwin.
Looks like Danny Baldwin
Little less wrinkly, maybe. We also know him because he was on... Phil Middlemiss was on That Can Dine With Me Coronation Street special with Ken Morley and Bette Lynch.
You know, if I don't have a context of who people are, I don't remember them at all. So I don't remember him being in it.
No, okay. Well, he was.
I don't disbelieve you.
He and Steph were introduced when Coronation Street started going 3 nights a week, and they wanted to expand the street. They built the maisonettes over the other side of the road, and they wanted to bring new characters, new life into this show. They were like a pair of like quite well-off, kind of yuppie-ish kind of characters that were quite different from all the, I don't know, the more traditional people, the characters that lived there on the street. There's quite a good few quotes from Mervyn Watson, who was the producer at the time, on Wikipedia and Coripedia about Des. For example, he said, "We wanted something that would catch the eye of the audience. A couple with loads of money and values that had grown out of the Thatcher years. We wanted to make them to make an immediate impact as soon as they arrived, and we talked up this couple. Young, flashy, exciting, lively characters." So let's have a look at Des's backstory. Well, prior to coming on the show, he'd met Steph, and it was a bit of a whirlwind romance, because it was only 2 months before they got married that he even met her. And it sounds like they had a bit of a Kevin and Sally meeting moment when Kevin splashed Sally with his car. With Steph and Des bumped into her and spilled her drink all over her. He ordered a replacement drink, which ended being poured over his head. But 2 months later they were married, so couldn't have been that bad.
Green card. Steph and Des buy the newly built number 6 at a cut price, as the dad owns the building site, and then they move in on their wedding day. Now they live in the masonette, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I've just looked up what is the difference between what is a masonette. Okay, so this is from Wikipedia. Maisonette, from the French maisonnette, meaning little house, typically refers to larger apartments spreading across 2 or more floors of an apartment building, connected by staircases within the maisonette. In the UK, the term maisonette may be used to distinguish dwellings which have their own entrance independent from the rest of a multi-storey block and are located above a shop or other retail establishment. This is different to flats, which are usually reached through shared entrance doors, stairs or corridors. This definition of masonette includes smaller masonettes occupying a single floor of a block, including designs also known as cottage flats and Tyneside flats.
Well, this counts.
So there's literally nothing in the word masonette to distinguish a small house.
No, which is what this is.
Unless you're using the original French definition.
Wait, I don't know why you're suddenly getting.
I'm getting really annoyed
about it now, because we talked about them and called them maisonettes prior to this 127th episode.
Yeah, but you know that previously to this year, I'd never been to Coronation Street, so I had no idea where anything was in relation to anything else. So I was perfectly happy for you to call a maisonette whatever you fancied, because in my mind it was all kind of like this nebulous cloud of like dwellings that just kind of hovered around.
But now you've seen them, you don't think it's a maisonette?
It's not. I don't think it's a maisonette. So I know for a fact it's not a maisonette.
Well, we'll call it a maisonette anyway.
It's not a maisonette. It's just a little house.
They moved into their little house on their wedding day, and as Des was carrying Steph over the threshold, he bumped her head on the door frame.
You carried me over the threshold, did you remember?
I do, yeah. I did it
I was
properly.
so heavy because I was full of 2 weeks worth of cruise food.
Well,
I showed you.
Des and Steph only went on honeymoon for 1 week. They went to Mallorca, and then when they got back, Des got his job as a bookie's clerk, and Steph worked behind a makeup counter at a department store.
Because they were stinking yuppies, they split the housework 50-50.
Yeah, this is them showing that this is a modern couple, not like
us, where I have to do everything.
I suppose it was a bit like they were saying it's not like some of the older traditional Corrie families, and which was like basically the woman was in charge and the man was like under the thumb a little bit. I don't think in the case of this relationship it was like that at all. 1991, Des got a bit obsessed by a boat because he wanted a baby, but Steph wasn't interested at that time. So to fill the void in his life, he bought an old boat for £500, stored it in his backyard, and then basically spent the rest of the year obsessing over making it seaworthy.
Very expensive thing.
A bit of an expensive hobby, but as we said, they were stinking rich, so they
also,
could do that.
baby's more expensive than practically any hobby you would care to name.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we do a podcast and don't have a baby.
That's why we have a cat.
Yeah, although she can be quite
She
expensive.
is quite expensive.
Anyway, there's a lot of tension that was caused between the couple because he was just spending all his time in the garden doing this. Also that year he employed Phyllis Pearce as a housekeeper.
Yeah, 50-50 housework my arse.
Yeah, it didn't last very long.
Later that year, he discovered that Steph was having an affair, probably because she was being neglected by her evil husband.
Well, that's what it was. She was fed up with him working on the boat,
Yeah.
so she
Make
had a
stand,
roving eye.
sister. That's right. She tries to make her think he's planning to kill himself by covering the boat in petrol and setting it alight. However, she finds him sitting on the bank and he says, "There goes our marriage, my dear. Didn't it go with a bang?"
Yeah, so that was.
You've
that was
been
the end
waiting
of
all
that.
day to say that. You know that, don't you? That's the best thing you could come up with.
Yeah.
He ends up being charged with polluting a public waterway, and he got given a conditional discharge for 12 months and a hefty legal bill. But thank God that they were yuppies, so they didn't care.
So that was the end of that, basically, and yeah, the burning boat symbolised the end of their relationship.
What shall we burn when we get divorced?
Oh
The
no.
We, you, I mean.
It's whatever's taking me away from you. So I think it means burning my school.
I don't think you're legally allowed to say that we do that. And just so we know, just to be clear, if the school does burn down, I am not taking any responsibility for it because it's too much effort.
1992.
You put yourself right in the spotlight.
I'm not going to burn my school down.
Good. We've made that clear. In 1992, he starts dating Angie Freeman, but she's more serious about it than he is, and he pours a pint over his head.
She pours a pint
That's
over
what I
his
meant.
head.
After getting fed up with him taking in Raquel as a lodger.
Yeah.
But before long, the pair were sleeping together.
Yeah, Raquel and Des. So when I was watching it, I really, really, really like Raquel as a character, and I always thought that she was perfectly
You were
suited
like
to Curly.
8, 9. No, you're 10 at this
Yeah.
point. 9.
No, I was older than that. I was like,
You were 9.
at this point I was 9, but I wasn't watching it at this point. I started watching it in
stop
1994,
jumping ahead then.
95.
Stop
But I'm
jumping
just
ahead.
trying to say that in my mind, Raquel and Curly were always the couple that were supposed to be, and I never liked it when Des got involved, and I was always a bit worried that Raquel would end up going off and staying with Des. Even though looking back on it, I'm sure that Raquel was probably a lot more suited to Des than she was Raquel.
Curly.
To Curly, I mean, Curly was a bit,
Idiot.
batting above. What's the phrase?
Punching above his
Punching
weight.
above his weight, exactly, with Raquel. But I think that's another reason I didn't like Des, because he treated Raquel so badly. But yeah, they were going out at this point, but Steph showed up again in April, and Raquel moved out, fed up that Des was putting his ex first. But she didn't stay long, Steph, because she admitted that she was on the run from her current boyfriend because she'd been having an affair with another man. So she was a pretty flighty lady, basically.
Flighty bird.
Terry Duckworth, meanwhile, who I think had been friends with Des, had Des beaten up because his next woman on his radar was Terry's wife, Lisa Duckworth, who is Tommy's mum. Tommy Duckworth, everybody's favourite.
Oh, I miss Tommy. I wish he was back in
Where's
it.
Tommy?
It was so much better when he was in
Where's
it.
Tommy?
Why did he leave?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows why Tommy left? Yeah, so Lisa went to go and live with her parents, basically, and but Des followed her, and they agreed to live away from Weatherfield together. So everything was seeming pretty hunky-dory between Des and Lisa, and he even kind of saw Tommy as like being the son he never had, his sort of raising him as his own son. But all that stopped in 1993 when Lisa was tragically hit and killed by a car. So that meant that Des lost the family that he'd always wanted. But he did at least get to see Tommy every so often because, of course, at that time was when Terry sold Tommy to Lisa's parents, the Hortons, up in Blackpool. But whenever Tommy came to visit, Des was there, and like his dad. So later on that year, he started dating Raquel again, and this is after he'd done a bit of a knight in shining armour job, because there was a barmaid at the time at the Rovers working with Raquel called Tanya Pooley, and she was a definite wrong, and she was a very nasty piece of work. And one of the things that she did was played a trick on poor gullible Raquel by telling her that there was she'd been phoned up to go to a fashion shoot or a model's photo shoot or something.
Model fashion photo shoot.
With Calvin Klein, I think. And then Raquel went to the place where Tanya said it was, and sadly there was no photo shoot there. But Tanya had said to Des, or she was trying to...
Calvin Klein.
She was trying to make herself look good in front of Des and said, "Oh, I've just sent Raquel out on this wild goose chase." And Des saw that was the wrong thing to do, so he went and rescued Raquel.
Naughty.
And so they ended up becoming an item again. But that didn't last very long, because by the end of the year, Des was bored of Raquel, and then he slept with Tanya.
I can't speak, I'm eating peanut butter.
Gemma's suddenly got a craving for peanut butter at the moment. I'll carry on.
It's Christmas, you can eat what you like.
Peanut butter isn't traditionally a Christmas food.
In 1994, my Michael started watching the programme, and he's 12, everybody.
11,
because he is, as we know, 9 months younger than me.
Go on, what happened in 1994? Swallow and explain.
He loses both women after walking in on Tanya in bed with his boss, Alex, who was a lady, because Alex is a non-gender specific name.
They would never have had a lesbian in Coronation Street in 1994.
And he kicks them out in front of Raquel.
Yeah, Raquel didn't realise that he was going out secretly with Tanya. So then when Raquel saw Des get annoyed about finding Tanya and Alex in bed together, she realised that Des still actually did have feelings for Tanya.
And
blah. Anyway, she was out. And then by the end of the year as well, Des had got a job managing the Rosamond Street betting shop. Now Barlow's Buys. Exactly.
In 1995, he encountered Steph, who was heavily pregnant, and she was working in a fast food outlet. He helps her find a flat because she's living in a grotty bedsit, but he turns down an offer to give things another go.
Yeah, because he didn't love her anymore, but he at least helped her out. What a nice gent.
Also that year, he briefly dated Maxine, but he dumped her because she was too clingy, and he even tried to seduce Liz, but she was having none of it. And let's face it, she was a catch back in 1995.
Some might say she's still a catch now. How many people have had a
crack at Liz?
I don't think every man on the street has had a go at Liz.
She does look easy.
And she's probably 50-50 about whether you're successful with it as well, to be honest.
Bells in the fruit machine.
Yeah.
In 1996, he started dating young widow Claire Palmer and organised a trip for the pair of them, plus daughter Becky, who took a while to warm to him.
Yes, they went on a barge trip together because he's still into his boats, you see. So
because one boat is very much the same as another one. He might as well have taken the ferry to... Where's the ferry? Can you go from...
You can't go on a ferry from anywhere from Manchester.
From the north.
Ireland.
Should have gone on a ferry to Ireland.
Yes. No, they went on a barge. But anyway, they moved into number 6 with Des, but she was pretending to rent the bookie's flat so that she wouldn't lose her £16,000 widow's pension.
In the UK, a maisonette.
No.
Yeah, it specifically.
Okay. Now that you've read the
now I know what the legal definition, according to Wikipedia, which is the end-all and be-all of definitions. Forget the Oxford Dictionary.
Basically, she was on a widow's pension for £16,000 because of her dead husband. I don't know.
Tell me, where do you get dead husbands from? Is that tax-free?
RAF.
Is that tax-free, or is that?
I've got no idea. I'm not in the RAF, so I don't think my teacher's pension's quite as good as that.
I'm not talking about you, am I?
Anyway, her father-in-law shopped her in, so that was the end of that.
What a dick.
But their relationship came to an end in 1997 when he seduced yet another woman, this time Samantha Failsworth.
I love that name.
I don't remember much about her apart from she rode a motorcycle.
Wow, what a woman.
Yeah, and they did a charity parachute jump together. Des then decided to go on a long boat trip to get his life sorted.
Boat trip?
Yeah. What's funny
What was
about
that, the ferry to the Isle of Wight?
Yeah.
It's an hour. After he got back to Weatherfield, he started dating Samantha and helped her to deal with the revelation that she was sexually abused by a family friend when she was 16. And if I'd
Deep
known
stuff.
how this sentence was going to end, I wouldn't have started it in such a cheery way.
Well, you should make the notes on with me then. Give it a
No,
try. I
later
wouldn't
in
know.
the year, Samantha's husband, Richie, turns up. He sounds like a wrong'un.
No, this is quite
No.
funny because Gemma's cousin's called Samantha and she's going out with somebody called Richie at the moment.
She is. But
Even
she's
spelt
not
in a silly way
married,
like that.
But she does want to be.
Yes.
How lovely. She left him after only 2 days of marriage, which we can imagine a similar scenario. He smashes Des Carl's windows, again, similar scenario, and spray paints the house, which Des initially blames Les Battersby for, because, as we all know, he was king of the chaps.
Les Battersby was here.
Yeah, it was.
So, 1998, the final year of Des's life.
The final countdown.
Started off quite well. He proposed to Samantha, who had been going through divorce proceedings with Richie at the time. But then Sam realised she doesn't want to be married again, so she convinced Richie to stop the divorce going through. Des threw her out when he found this out, but then they got back together when Natalie Horrocks helped him realise that he'd been rushing Samantha into marriage. But then that didn't last long anyway, because he finished with Samantha once and for all when he discovered that she'd been having an affair with mechanic Chris Collins. So it's like, at this time in Coronation Street, everyone seemed to be sleeping with everyone else, if you believe this storyline.
I don't believe it really happened. I think it's all fake.
It's true. Sam pretends that she's pregnant with Des's child, and then she pretends to go and have an abortion, just to screw him up. And then she left the street when her manipulations came out, and the truth came out that she hadn't actually gone to have an abortion, but as she was driving away on her motorcycle, she told Des that she actually was pregnant.
Obviously fake, because as we all know, pregnant women cannot ride motorcycles. It's physically impossible.
Don't let that stop you. You can do it.
Des and Natalie became an item later in 1998, and they soon got married.
He got married quickly, didn't he? He married Steph after 2 weeks, and then within the year
2
of
months,
meeting... Oh, 2 months, sorry. And then within the year of meeting Natalie, they were married.
Well, you know,
He's
when
just a family man.
when you meet your true love, you know, don't you?
Yes.
Before long, Natalie's son Tony turned up on the scene, asking for money to pay off drug dealers, and then Des flushes the drugs down the toilet. Where the dealers show up at the house, threatening Tony, Des intervenes and he gets beaten up. And then he dies in hospital with Natalie at his side, watched by an audience of 20 million viewers, which was the highest rated episode of the year.
Yeah, that was quite sad when he died, really. I never really particularly bought Des and Natalie as a couple. But, I mean, they were only together for a few months anyway, so it could have worked. But it was quite sad when he died, because, he got beaten up. I think he bashed his head on the coffee table or something, if I remember rightly. He's, fell backwards into it, and then Natalie was there at his bedside at hospital, and his final lines to her was that they were going to get out and go to Blackpool. He was going to take her up the tower. And then he had a horrible heart attack, massive heart attack, and died. And that was the end of Des. And it was a bit sad, but like I said, I never really liked Des as a character at the time, so I wasn't too fussed.
You heartless
But really,
cow.
reading back about him, I do think I probably would have liked him now, because now I'm used to it.
You're more mature now.
Yes,
as well.
I'm used to the idea of everybody going around and jumping into bed with everybody.
And you're also a yuppie that lives in a masonette.
Yeah, I do. I
You're not
identify
really into
with
boats, though.
him. No,
But that's only because you haven't really had a chance
I
to
get
acquaint yourself
seasick.
with them.
I get seasick.
Yeah.
I've been living in Southampton for how long now? 12, 13 years? That's long enough for me to get into boats if I was going to.
That's true. We have been on plenty, haven't we?
I don't know if there's many people that are like Des at the moment that are just because I know there's the likes of like the Tommies and the Ryan Connors and the Luke Britton
There's
and everything.
no
There's-
middle-aged entrepreneurial,
no, not really.
middle
maybe-
class kind of characters.
Yeah, no, there aren't.
Unless you say Nick is 50.
Oh yeah. Who's 50?
You said Nick was 50
Oh,
because
yes,
he was the same age as...
Yeah, I said that Nick. Yeah, Yeah, I suppose he is closest to Nick, but Nick doesn't go around jumping into bed with everyone, so it's not
Oh
really
no, he
particularly
doesn't, does he? Wait a
Well,
minute.
this is only this week that this has happened, but he was also quite good for a laugh, and he was one of the other things about him is he was a bit of a prankster, especially when it came to the Wiltons that lived next door, poor old Derek and Mavis that had to put up with his little jolly
Antics.
jokes for many years.
I think they're called antics.
Antics. For example, in 1991, his boat's motor fell through. Oh no, this wasn't a joke. This is just something that happened that annoyed them.
This wasn't a joke.
His boat's motor fell through their fence and into the garden. But then, once he'd burnt the boat, which we said about earlier, he then pretended to the Wiltons he was going to put its remains back in the garden, just as
Why
a
would
joke,
they
though,
care?
because it was an eyesore. And when he was doing up the boat, it wasn't just Steph that he was annoying with
For some
that.
reason they said bury it in the garden.
Oh no, just leave it there. Also in 1993, Des bought a camper van. Crane lifted it into the Wiltons' garden.
What a jolly joke.
Just for a joke. But then Derek responded by throwing bits of it back into Des's garden while a potential buyer was being shown around number 6.
And the buyer was going, so you said this was a masonette, but there are 2 floors. This makes no sense. So you have a dictionary I could borrow for a minute?
Yeah.
He's in, also that year, he was having a bumpy year.
Well, no, it might not have been that year. I just don't know when it
alright
happened.
then, you don't know what you're talking about.
Don't know. I
He
could have
sent
been
Derek an anonymous Valentine's card, which I assume happened in February, and he bought Mavis a cannabis plant.
Oh, the japes that
What
Des played
hilarity.
on him. Yeah.
In 1997, he posted a sex book to the letterbox, which I've never heard the phrase sex book before, which makes me wonder what it was exactly. Was it a book that was about sex, or was it a book that you used for sex?
I
In
think
which
it was
case,
about it.
did he clean it first?
I think it was like the joy of sex or something. Well, he had
Like the
posted
Kama Sutra.
he posted it through their letterbox, not realising that Derek had in the meantime died from this road rage heart attack incident.
Did he die from that, or was it the sex book that
It
did
wasn't. It was road rage. I saw it, but then he had to. Then he was sort of sweating for a bit because he didn't want Mavis to find out that this book had been posted through. But I think Emily let him in or something, so that was
She
okay.
might have
there.
comforted her in her time of need. I mean, women have needs.
Oh, that's true.
He quit in 1998 and he said, if I had my choice, Des would have got involved with a couple of blonde Swedish exchange students and then win the lottery. I've enjoyed every minute of playing Des Barnes, but it's time to move on. I'll be leaving with fond memories. After all, Des has had more women than Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
And as we know at the time, poor old Bill was in hot water.
Oh yeah, back then he
With
was.
his little Monica scandal.
Yeah.
That poor woman.
Hey, Monica Lewinsky.
Yes, she never lived that down. Everyone loves Bill Clinton now. Everyone's like, oh hey, he's the Playboy president. He's so cool. He was jazz and he had naughty things done to him. And she's just like, oh you slag. What do you get your dress clean for?
Do you think you would like to have another character like Des that's a bit of an older Lothario, but not like Lewis Archer kind of, that would just work his way in through the women of the street?
I don't know. I just keep thinking there's been quite a few like him. I think
They're just a bit younger than him, aren't
Danny
they?
Baldwin was a bit like him.
Yeah, I suppose he was a little bit.
And also, who's the one that died in Ken's arms?
Mike Baldwin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They all
he
just
was-
seem cut from the same cloth. I know they're not the same character. I know they don't have exactly the same personality, but it's because I've never seen Des Barnes in anything. So in my mind, he's basically just a morph of those 2 characters.
Yeah, I suppose it's difficult to compare him if you've never actually seen him in anything. I don't know whether there's any of them been completely like him. What about like having a rich kind of successful couple in Coronation Street? I just can't imagine them particularly fitting in. And I know people in Coronation Street now do own their own businesses and everything, but with the likes of Steve, you still kind of see him as being like
Just
a
dossing
backstreet
by,
northern lad, and not like.
The fact that they all live in maisonettes doesn't help. But I think Carla's, quite a successful businesswoman.
Yeah, I guess so actually. Carla.
But she doesn't. She's more upper class, isn't she?
Yeah, Carla is very different to everyone else. That's a good comparison actually, and yeah, she has.
She doesn't lord it over everybody, but she definitely has a higher status than everyone. They all treat her like the lady of the manor, don't they? Like.
Yeah.
She is almost kind of like that, really, because everybody works for her.
Yeah,
She might as well
that's
just
true.
buy up the land.
Yeah, so Carla is the closest we've got to Des Barnes at the moment. I wouldn't be that interested in having somebody like that's jumping from bed to bed, because they have enough kind of affair storylines. At the moment, it just seems that everyone's suddenly started either sleeping with somebody new or going out with somebody new, and I'm just not interested. I'd rather have more tamer storylines, I suppose. family-oriented storylines in Coronation Street. But I think Des was quite an important character just because he did herald in the 90s, and if there's nothing else you can say about him, he was very, very 90s, and he was of the era. He was kind of the yuppies. He was a real leap from the traditional kind of Hilda Ogdens.
He was a new generation.
Exactly, and I mean, I guess in a way you could say that all characters are a bit like him now, because there isn't really anybody left in Coronation Street that's like of that old generation. Even like Ken's modernised, hasn't he? He's got his laptop.
Emily's still hanging in there, going to church every Sunday and drinking his sherry.
But Corrie is such a different beast now than it was back in the 80s, and I suppose Des as a character was a bit of a... Yeah, exactly. He was like the bridge from old to new in a way. So what a pioneer.
Yeah. Who represents the modern era then? Which family would you say most...
What, nowadays? I don't know.
What's this era called? The teens? What do we call
we haven't
it?
got it. We're just waiting to get to the 20s,
like,
and everyone was like, no.
Get to the 20s, because we're so confused. Nobody agreed on the noughties, but everyone's kept calling it that.
Yeah. I wonder whether...
Is it the teens? Is it called the teens?
I don't know whether it's called anything, to be honest. But I don't know what epitomises the moment. Maybe the likes of Kylie or something, because of like the chavvy teens. I don't know what would...
Write in and let us know. Where do you think the show's going this decade, and who do you think represents? If we were in 20 years' time to look back on this era, who would we say?
Yeah, that was really... Was
the litmus test for this is now Corrie in the teens.
It's difficult to know without looking into the future and seeing where Coronation Street's going to go, but...
We can only speculate.
It doesn't seem like the kind of people that are on Coronation Street now are that much different from how they were 10 years ago, and a lot of the characters are exactly the same.
True.
But
anyway.
Maybe the likes of like the fact that now they're bringing in more families from other cultures and gay characters and things.
I was thinking the Nazirs
and the Sophie Websters.
But I don't really want the Nazirs to be the ones, that represent the decade.
No.
Because I only like one of them, really.
Yeah, that's a good question to throw out to our readers, isn't it?
Well, especially for the end of the year, it kind of is a time of reflection and thoughtfulness as we move into our resolutions, which I'm sure everyone has theirs.
If we were proper podcasters, we'd be able to think about it on the fly and think of a really good answer
the Nazirs are the
this.
only ones that are really sticking in my mind, because if you really need a character that's newly in the last 4 years. I mean, maybe we haven't had them yet. Maybe
I do maybe think Kylie as well.
Well, then you'd have to say the Platts, wouldn't you? You couldn't just say it's the fam. Oh, I guess I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
like
to be the chavvy one.
Kind of...
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe the likes of like Rosie Webster, although I mean she was.
Yeah, because Kylie is quite a modern character, because you couldn't really have had a character that was a drug addict mum who you felt sorry for back in the day. She would have been ostracised and criticised, and I mean she sold her kid, and now she's trying to live the domestic life of domestic bliss with David. It's not working. She's the modern woman trying to juggle it all and taking drugs, how we all have to, just to keep up with what Cosmo says we've got to do.
No, we don't.
Well, you're not a woman, so you don't understand the struggles.
I don't understand being a woman. No. Right, shall we leave it at that?